Did you know that air pollution takes up to 8 years off average human life expectancy? It impacts our children's development, and it can even sway elections. It's the world's biggest environmental health threat. Indeed, it's a bigger health threat than obesity and smoking. Yet most of us are completely blind to how it impacts us as we go about our daily lives. Today, I'm joined by Louise Thomas, founder of Air Aware Labs. She's turned street-level data into a global app active in 90 countries that helps you dodge invisible toxins in real time. Stay with us on the Beyond GDP podcast to learn how to protect your health, your family, and your lungs. Today on the Beyond GDP podcast, we're going to be talking about air pollution. No, we're not going to be talking about greenhouse gases. The climate crisis is obviously a huge issue, but there's another problem of us pumping rubbish into our atmosphere. It's pumping rubbish into our atmosphere that's damaging our health and killing people today. In the Social Progress Index, we track a number of these measures of particulate air pollution, and there were some very disturbing trends globally, especially in emerging markets where this type of air pollution is actually getting worse and worse and worse. But to talk about this today, I'm delighted to have Louise Thomas, who's the CEO of Air Aware Labs, who's got some fantastic ideas and solutions to how we can manage our lives under this threat of air pollution. Louise, welcome to the Beyond GDP podcast. Perhaps we could tap into your expertise first of all. Talk us through the scale of this problem, because I think people don't really get how serious this air pollution problem is in terms of impact on health and actually other metrics of social progress.
Yeah, absolutely. And great to be here. Thanks very much, Mike. So, I think before I started working on air pollution, equally, I didn't really know the scale of the problem, but it's generally quoted as being the contributor of 7 to 8 million premature deaths per year globally, which puts it as the biggest environmental risk to health by a very, very long way. But also what I still have to remind myself is that it's considered the second biggest risk to health in general. So high blood pressure is higher, but it's recently gone up that list, that rather unpleasant list, and has overtaken obesity and smoking in the lists of global health risks. And this is the UN, the World Bank, the World Economic Forum, like all of the big players use these kind of metrics. And then the other way of looking at it from a health perspective is what's the impact on life expectancy. So overall, and I think this one just applies to particulate matter pollution, actually, as you mentioned, that is a big one, although not the only one. And particulate matter pollution is estimated to take 1.9 years off the average life. But in some places, as you say, for example, in New Delhi, there's parts of New Delhi where it's estimated to take 8 years off a life, which is just extraordinary. So yeah, it's huge. And then we could go on to the GDP sort of aspects. It's thought to cost the global economy between, this is quite a big range, but even, whichever end of the range it's a big one, between about $3 and $8 trillion per year through increased health burden and productivity losses.
Wow, which is extraordinary. And I suppose before looking at this issue, I kind of thought that this was more about emerging economies, that it was, you mentioned New Delhi, emerging economies, they're starting to industrialize, they've got an air pollution problem, but we in the developed world have kind of got over it. We've had Clean Air Acts, we've taken lead out of our petrol, so actually things are all getting better. But it's not that simple, is it?
Well, I mean, there is a huge variation, and it's right that in some countries, particularly UK and EU, there have been some big areas of progress. And in the UK, just as a matter of comparison, the figure for premature deaths that's usually quoted is about 36,000, and it's that equates to about zero point 0.2 years of an average life, if you want to put it like that. So it's still an issue, and we still in the UK, in general, have levels of air pollution which are above the World Health Organization guidelines. But also, it's fair to say that they're nowhere near as bad as what we see in other parts of the world. But then there's also new risks coming along. So in some places, traffic pollution is, there's policies which are dealing with that. Industrial pollution, etc., is being managed. But then in other places, we're obviously getting increased impact of wildfires. In northern England recently, but also parts of southern Europe and across North American continent. So that brings some big new challenges. And then even something like wood burning in cities in the winter is now seen as one of the biggest sources of particulate matter, which is probably not I would say being managed down at the moment, unfortunately. So good progress in places, but some additional problems and some things which are stubbornly not changing.
And it is an issue that has had some political attention. I mean, we're both Londoners, and the Mayor of London, I think it's fair to say, took some political risks to push through actions that would actually reduce particulate air pollution in London with some success. Is that an exception, or do you think there's some momentum behind this issue?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, yeah, put himself out there and had kind of some political consequences through his stance on that. I think the figures that the Mayor of London usually quotes is reduction in nitrogen dioxide, which is good, but I haven't seen much so far on reducing particulate matter, which can be harder and have regional sources and so on. But the kind of leadership amongst mayors globally is increasing, I would say. So there's a network called Breathe Cities, which kind of draws off, excuse me, what we've done in London called Breathe London. And I think it's up to between 20 and 30 mayors now globally who are all committed to learning from each other about these kind of solutions that they can take at city level, and increasing the availability of data and so on. So there is leadership, but yeah, I think we rightly in London should be proud of what we've kind of managed to do collectively.
And maybe can I just use your expertise for a moment, just in terms of the kind of the gallery of villains. So we've got particulate air pollution, which is basically bits of dust of various sizes that are really bad for your breathing and in various ways. Then you mentioned NO2. Now, talk us through what that is and what that does, how that's harmful.
Yeah, so I mean, basically, you can split it into two categories. So, particulate matter, which is usually measured in different sizes. So, a lot of monitors measure PM10, which is actually quite a sort of chunky size as it goes. But the smaller they go down, the potentially worse they are for you, because they can cross over into every part of your body, even into your brain, even across the placenta. So we go down to PM 2.5 is regularly measured and quoted, and then go down to PM1, which is ultrafine particles and even smaller. So basically with that, it's partly what they're made of. So if they're sort of made of metal and so on, they can be more toxic, but it's also about their size and how they can travel around the body. And then you've got a set of gases. So nitrogen dioxide comes up a lot because it comes from exhaust, and it's a very frequently seen or existing pollutant. It's not really seen, which is one of the problems. Yeah, I mean that's it irritates your breathing and your lungs, and it can lead to asthma flare-ups and so on. And then there's a set of other gases. So ozone comes out often on sunny days, ground level ozone, which can irritate irritate your breathing. And then in some places, things like sulfur dioxide has gone down a lot in the UK, but other places in the world, still quite high levels of other gases like that.
Mm. So it's like a mixture of different potential pollutants with different effects. And I think what
Yeah.
I struck me on your website was also how air pollution can be bad for educational attainment as well. So it's not just the direct health, there's other aspects that how it can damage people's sort of quality of life.
Yeah, exactly. So, like cognitive function in general, but also for children, even being exposed in the womb can like. There's a big study that's come out from King's College recently that talks about exposure during pregnancy for the child is then has an impact on their development over many years after that. I mean, you can. It's been known for a long while that it impacts like lung function, which is a bit more obvious. But even getting into like these developmental issues, and I mean, I kind of every always reading new stuff, and every time I think, goodness, there can't be yet another thing that's linked to air pollution, and then there is. So even things like on higher levels of air pollution days when elections are on, people are more likely to vote for an opposition party. And the connectivity there is, I think, basically it essentially raises your level of sort of anger towards the system. So, I mean, these are smaller changes than the health ones, but there are still correlations in unexpected ways.
Now, I mean, the thing that really I just wasn't aware of until I learned about your work was I just kind of assumed the air's the air and it'll be averages across countries or cities will be pretty much similar. But
Yeah.
what you were saying is that this actually could be hyper local in how you experience air pollution. Explain this to me.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think this is a common misperception, really, and I think that's because if you do access this kind of data, it's often on a weather app, and you'll just be given one number that's sort of meant to tell you everything that you need to know, and actually doesn't really tell you anything at all. So yeah, I mean because I mean gases in particular dissipate from their source. So right next to a car exhaust, compared to 5 meters away, 10 meters away, whatever, it will start to disappear quite rapidly. So there is that effect around major roads, and even to the extent that like some of the charities who work with families and give guidance to families say, if you're walking with your child, walk on the opposite side of the pavement from the road. I mean, parents might do that naturally from a safety perspective, but they may not know that they're also having an impact on the levels of pollution even over that tiny distance. So yeah, the particulate matter varies a bit less, but it still does change from road to road and place to place within the city. And then the biggest variation, I think, is probably over time. So the amount that the pollution starts to build up from kind of 7 a.m, typically in an urban centre, might drop off a little bit through the day, and then rise again up to the evening. So those changes are really significant, and most people wouldn't be aware of that.
So these variations in time and place are what you're working on with Air Aware Labs to try and help us manage those air pollution risks. Tell us the story about how you got into this and what the solution is that Air Aware Labs is working on.
Yeah, so I mean, as you know, Mike, I was in government for quite a long while, and probably for the last sort of 3 to 4 years of being in government, I started getting involved with local schools and air pollution campaigning work. The Lambeth Council have got a process of rolling out school streets, so they look at closing the streets outside schools at pick up and drop off time to reduce air pollution impacts on children and improve road safety and so on, and encourage active travel and all these good things. So I started getting involved in that, and part of it at the beginning was kind of standing outside a school holding an air pollution monitor, and it was sort of all very interesting and got people interested in what are you up to, what is that bit of equipment and so on. But I kind of just knew instinctively that it was not really giving us particularly useful data, because it was just a very small amount of measurements that weren't really comparable, because it changes with the weather and not taking that into account. So I kind of got into the subject, but had this like itch that I thought, this can't be everything. And then a few years later, after the pandemic, I decided to get more into it and joined Breathe London, which has a community program. So we got a monitor installed in Brixton. And through that, I started learning more and more about the science, about how the data is captured, what it can be used for, the variations between, a monitor placed in central Brixton versus one over the other side of the park in a much leafier area, and the levels that each of those are showing. So it just got me really interested in how can we surface all of this to people, because there clearly is something here to help people protect their health if it's the second biggest threat to health, and yet the things that people could potentially do are not being surfaced to them. There's definitely a gap to fill. So that was really the kind of concept that I had, and then I left government and met my co-founder, and sort of the rest is history. I created Aware Labs.
And so, how does the tool work?
Yeah, so we have model data, which is draws on these monitors that exist around the city, but also the traffic flows and the weather patterns and so on. And then we link it up to people's GPS, and then also their activity. So being able to see sort of how fast their GPS is moving allows us to estimate what activity they're doing, or we get them to tell us directly if they're running or so on. And then we link that to their pollution exposure. So we give them 24/7 sort of insights into where they're being exposed, what they can do about it. If it's an activity, we recommend cleaner routes for them to take. If it's about indoor air pollution, it's things like when's the best time to open the window so you're not letting in more pollution than you're ventilating out, and basically giving all of that sort of personalized and specific recommendations, and all delivered digitally. So it's not we're not asking people to carry like extra monitors or extra bits of kit.
So, I can full confession, as an asthmatic, this is something I need to get. I get it's an app on my phone.
So it's an app. Yeah.
And this can then tell me when's the better time to go to the shops, when to open my windows, when to go for a walk, what routes to follow, that will reduce that risk to me. That's great, but you're not just in London, are you?
No, so our app is used in about 90 countries, and the reason we're able to get so quickly out to sort of so many places around the world was, I think, almost entirely because the first thing we did before we launched the app was we launched an integration with Strava. So Strava have, I think, about 130 million customers or users around the world, and we started to get through this integration data put onto people's feeds, and then friends saw on other people's feeds, and it was quite extraordinary really. Within a couple of weeks of launching it, we saw, oh look, there's somebody using it in Australia, oh look, there's somebody using it in Singapore and New York. It was quite amazing. Mexico actually was an early one that we spotted some users. So that was amazing, and the same, it's very scalable, because part of my experience of getting this monitor put up in Brixton was realizing, like, dealing with hardware and dealing with managing processes with local authorities and so on is really quite hard and quite painful, and there's no way I would be up for scaling that to to any extent, whereas these digital products can scale very rapidly. So I'm glad we took that route.
I mean, that's extraordinary. From going from you with a handheld air monitor outside the school in
Yeah.
one location to have something that could be used so widely is phenomenal. So, what's the next phase for you?
Yeah, I mean, we're constantly bringing out new features and things. So our last feature that we brought out only a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, is a route planner. So in the past, we sort of optimized routes, but looking at like habitual routes that people were doing. So it was a bit kind of looking backwards, whereas now people can put in a destination and get a route and get turn by turn navigation, so they can see where the hotspots of pollution are coming up and what they can do about it. And then the next phase for that is to integrate that into Garmin so that people can get it and be able to follow routes directly within Garmin. So that's a whole kind of set of things that are like very requested by our users. But then, I mean, we just keep on improving the way that we surface all of this data from user feedback. There's a challenge in all of this around, there is a vast amount of data, but people don't want a vast amount of data. They want simplicity, and some people really love. Well, we've got a kind of leaderboard function. Some people love that. They want to be able to compete. They want to see, are they improving over time? Whereas others just want, very simple instructions. So we continue to iterate how we present all of that. And then we've also got a set of work going on with sporting events. So we did work with the London Marathon, and then last weekend with the Diamond League meet in the London Stadium, and we're hoping to roll out to other sporting events around the world as well. Which it's a variety of things. It can be about offering spectators cleaner routes to the venue. It can be about supporting elites as they do their final training runs, helping them to find cleaner routes for that. It can just be general awareness and feedback to people who are participating. So yeah, that's exciting because it gets to sort of quite an influential set of people and events, and gets us out a bit more into the mainstream.
I mean, Louise, you're too modest to tell us, but you've won huge numbers of awards and stuff like with this work, which has been terrific. In a very short period of time, you've had sort of a huge amount of success. And as you confessed to us earlier, it was not that long ago you were working as a civil servant in government, which isn't normally seen as the training ground for an entrepreneur. So what was the cultural adjustment to go from working in government to being a social entrepreneur like this? And what did you bring from your government experience that was an advantage to being an entrepreneur? And maybe also what was hardest in changing in that these two different worlds?
I mean, you're right. I think it's not a well-trodden path. I sort of have a tiny group of people who've moved from government to startups, and if we've missed anyone out there, please come and talk to me. But it's sort of 20, 30 people or something who kind of swap notes from time to time. So it's not a well-trodden path. But I think that there's so much that you can bring from one world to from the government world to startup world. So communication skills, project management skills, leadership skills, team building. I mean, all of these things are very relevant in both, and civil servants tend to have good grounding in those things. I would say the thing that's weirdest, I think I've more or less got over it, but I certainly found it very weird to start off with as a civil servant, is all the kind of focus on telling your personal story. So there's always a, for a founder, you know, why are you the right person to solve this problem? What's your personal experience of it that you're bringing to the table? And a lot of kind of, you know, putting you out there as an individual, which civil service doesn't particularly, you know, it's kind of the opposite really, that you're part of a much bigger machine. So that I did find quite strange, but you know, it's like all these things you do, you sort of put yourself out there enough and then you realize it's not that bad after all.
And it's part of what's needed to succeed, as you have done spectacularly. Now, Louise, now we go to the App Store, do we? And where do we go? We've looked for AirAware Labs on the App Store.
Yeah, so it's on App Store and Play Store. I think searching AirTrack is probably the best way. I think, sadly, the first ones that might come up are tracking of aeroplane flights. So ignore those ones. And then I think just below those, you'll see AirTrack by AirAware Labs, and that will be us.
Okay, AirTrack by AirAware Labs. I'm definitely downloading it. I'm going to get the family to download it. And I'm sure lots of our listeners and viewers will do so as well. Louise, thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you for joining us, and thank you all for listening. And get yourself to your favourite provider of apps and get AirTrack from the AirAware Labs, and you make yourself healthier. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you want to learn more about going beyond GDP, Social Progress Imperative has the tools to help you. Our flagship Global Social Progress Index covers 170 countries with data going back to 2011. Through 57 different indicators, the Global Social Progress Index gives you a rigorous and comprehensive assessment of how countries are performing on real quality of life. For information on all of these tools, go to our website at socialprogress.org.